And that money could be funneled back through to the Middle East and onward to the big bank underground in the mountains called Tibet. I found it quite funny that the Rose Bowl parade that was held this year introduced a gentleman who was responsible for choosing the princesses and the queen of the parade, and his name was Tibet. And we hadn't heard anything about Tibet recently in the recent years, except in secret societies who talk about the genius of this buds for you, Buddhism, sent out to that area by the Indians in northern India, but and is now part of China. But to have a hint that Tibet would become important by naming the guy who chose the princesses Tibet, and then having what we've experienced this year is the revival of Tibet as the focus of the Olympic flame. Olympic, original lamp, I see. Olympic flame. Now, the Olympics is basically the test set out to discover how evolved the human body has become when it comes to a task-specific thing. How high can you jump? How far can you jump? How fast can you run? How can you skate? How can you pole vault? Each one of the tasks considered by the Olympics are the target on which others want to improve from year to year. Until now, we're down to a millisecond improvement, so it gives the controllers confidence that improvement over what they have now is not going to be spectacular, but in very small detail from now on. And of course, similar activity is going on to identify the functions of the brain, and awards are given called the Way or Rhodes scholarships. And Academy Awards are given to those people who make the brain function better with pictures by a guy called Oscar. And Oscar is basically known as the name carried by butlers. And butlers are the people who help you get dressed. And getting dressed, it means putting on clothes. And putting on clothes basically means that you're dealing with the Neanderthaler who was the inventor of the scraper that allowed things to be scraped, and eventually the skin of animals could be used for clothes. And of course, a clothier today is the official name of the people who are most involved. They are clothiers, and at the same time they are tailors, because in order to get back down to genetic engineering, you have to be dealing with eggs, and with eggs you're dealing with chickens and cocks, and that means you have to have a tail. So the higher you go in the world of clothiers, the more likely you are to wear tails, as you saw being worn at weddings, specifically the wedding in the royal family that happened last weekend. So the coding structure is a language. It's a language that creates pictures. It's a language that uses the alphabet and the numbering system, but allows you to manipulate positions and meanings and words phonetically so that you can basically communicate to your peers if you happen to be at the highest levels of these degrees. And I suggest that anyone below the 40th degree would have no real power in the real activity that is happening in the world. They tell you life begins at 40, and by that they mean the 40th degree, both in secret societies and in latitude. Now, in order to transfer all of this technology, they had to have a premise for what they were going to do once they got the technology transferred. It had to be used for its assigned lease period, and then it had to be repossessed. Today's reminder of this repossession is in Argentina. Argent in French, silver, means money, currency. Argentina is tan. Tina is part of that. And the big statue that stands with its arms extended is symbolic of Jesus, or Christ, the Redeemer. Now again, you have in the word Christ, IRS, and the Redeemer basically means repo man. So the IRS has a task of managing a system that will allow funds to be paid and value to be returned, interest. IRS is found in the word interest. Let's explain how this came about. When they first began setting up China and the drug world in Afghanistan, the pass in the mountains, the Khyber Pass in the mountains, became the appropriate place for a tax collector. And in those days, they called him the toll gator. And the toll gator's task was fairly easy. Marco Polo identified, along with his dad, granddad, what in Asia was significant and of value to be brought back over to the Middle East, and eventually on to Florence in Italy. Camels were found to be the easiest way to take things across the mountains and through the deserts and on to the Mediterranean.